Okay, so we were saying that there is going to be, after a while, from the loyalties to rather small communities like family and religious community or professional communities that you belong to, you start changing your loyalty from these smaller loyalties to a larger loyalty, to a larger authority, which is the nation state. Okay? And one of the reasons why this shift takes place in Europe especially is because of Reformation. Remember Reformation from the historical background? So there was, what was that all about?
Luther.
What?
Luther.
Luther? What did Luther do?
He challenged the Catholic Church.
Okay, he started an academic debate, by the way. I mean, he didn't actually plan to create these he didn't plan to create these this almost a revolution or the change that we call reformation now. He didn't really plan it. He actually started an academic debate on how the Catholic Church is quite limiting and controlling. So at the time, though, I want you to just understand that people thought religion was extremely important. So people actually thought that it was normal that religion had a huge influence on the state, okay, or on the higher authorities. So at the time, people were quite used to religious empires, the idea of a religious empire, okay? Crusades and other religious conflicts have actually made it quite normal in the minds of people living in Europe at the time that religion, of course, will have an effect on the government style of the states. So Reformation, what Luther triggered and which became a Reformation, which decreased the effect of the Catholic Church on state affairs in Europe, was a turning point, okay? It was a huge turning point in the international system because people started understanding that religion does not have to rule people living in the state, or the church didn't have to be so strong, or a religious empire or a state based on religion was not the only option, okay? So a secular state, the understanding of a secular state was possible after Reformation. I want you to just think for a minute, okay? Right now, we take secularism for granted. Right now, we take things like, of course you are loyal to the state, kind of stuff for granted. We normalized it in our minds that everybody should be loyal to the state, that, secularism is something that is quite accepted, especially in European states. But think for a minute. Centuries ago, that wasn't the case. People were actually quite religious and quite loyal to the church. So Reformation, if you think it that way, you will understand how Reformation was a huge development, guys. Okay? So when Luther said, why is the Catholic Church organizing our lives and everything and the state, that was a huge difference in people's mentalities. And it triggered the debate, and the debate has become a distinction between the Catholic Church and Protestantism. And then you have, remember Henry VIII, there's the Anglican Church. So you have definitely a decrease in the effect of religion on the state. But I'm not talking about the effect of religion completely disappearing. That's not the case, okay? But there were different sects, and the authority of the state has become more secular in that sense. So the tight control of the church no longer exists, but there's still the church still has an influence. Still, though, there is definitely a shift, okay? And another thing is, Reformation is important to understand why people's loyalties from smaller loyalties to smaller authorities have shifted to higher authorities like the state. So the second reason is, guys, again, think of the times when you grew up at one place and you never actually left that one place that you grew. Now, the exchange students, I mean, in your case, you're on the other side of the world, you know, you're so far away from your hometown, and you have actually done, you know, something that most people don't do. In your case, you know, you came from a closer distance, but still, imagine, you know, how many people actually come from your countries to Turkey. So you're actually changing, not only changing your place of residence for a semester, but also your whole view of the world by coming to a different culture and by experiencing that different culture. That's non-existent in Europe at the time. Okay? So imagine before Westphalia, in 14th, 15th centuries, we have people, actually in 16th, 17th centuries also, we have people who grow up in the same place and who die there, and they don't go out of their towns, not even once. We still have people who live, you know, quite a limited life in that way. But at the same time, that started changing with innovations. With, do you remember the printing press? You know, once there was printing press, Reformation actually spread in Europe. So people started reading more. They didn't have to believe the church when the church said, you know, you can actually buy your place into heaven. So, you know, people actually started reading and education levels increased. And this is kind of what we should call, you know, a limited globalization of that time. So people started moving. They started migrating. The moment you start moving, your loyalties are going to change. Okay? When you go from one place to another, your loyalties will start changing. So in the exchange student's case, maybe you have made friends that you will probably be in contact with for years to come. I don't know. I actually, last week, I saw my graduate school best friend after about 7 years, and she drove 2 hours to just come and see me. You know, things have changed for her, and for me, we have become friends, and it's continuing. Just like that, once you move, and I lived in the US for 5 years, so that means I actually changed places, came to a different culture, and got to know that culture. Okay? So when you start having these kinds of demographic movements, you actually start creating an interdependence in the system. Meaning, you know, you one day decide that you will no longer stay in your town and you actually move to another town, or you start traveling, and now you start creating different loyalties. Okay? So your shifting loyalties will bring certain. I will go back to my first question in this class. Actually, I asked, are there people who feel lonely from time to time? Well, when you move to another place, you actually change your loyalties, but you go away from your community and your family and your more limited loyalties, and you start feeling more loneliness, okay, solidarity. So you need solidarity. And so you start thinking, you know, this is a new environment, a new life, and I no longer have all these, you know, old loyalties and friends and community that I had previously. So I have to create new ones. And in the meantime, that sense of not belonging to anywhere starts growing. Tula, you come from Sweden, you live in Sweden, and you came to Turkey, right? But you're not an exchange student, you're actually, okay. So when you first moved here, things must have looked quite different for you. Very different, right? So you start thinking, okay, you know, I need to be part of something. So there are certain things that you can do. And in the case of the whole, you know, society, I mean, I'm giving you examples from individuals' lives, but imagine that this takes place for large groups in the society. And when people actually look around and they don't see their smaller communities that they felt safe in, they no longer see that around them, they start thinking, I should be belonging to something higher, a higher authority. That's kind of how the idea of a state makes you feel comfortable in your own skin, which means the state, after your mom and dad, your family, or your community, the state promises you that you will be happy, you will feel fulfilled, you will have a good life, okay? So it's kind of, the idea here is kind of, you know how you always feel secure that your family is around, and when you have financial problems, you know, you can borrow money from your family. And no? No, you can, okay, all right, good. So you feel secure that, you know, with smaller communities in your knitting group, if there's anything wrong going with your knitting, you know, other people in your knitting community will show you how to actually knit, right? Or in your Fenerbahce soccer club, when there is indeed a horrible situation like being defeated by Galatasaray recently, you are in that community and the community supports you, and you feel warm and you feel secure and you feel, okay, let's see what's going to happen in the next game. So you don't immediately decide to commit suicide when you lose the game. Instead, you know, the whole group gets together and supports you. Once you start moving out of your small community, your small town, you know, you start losing that comfy feeling of support. And that actually is the opportunity for the state to get you to believe that the state is going to provide for you, okay? So the state tells us, I'll build roads. I'm going to build schools so your children can go to schools. I'm going to provide all the basic needs that you have, okay? I am going to give you discounts on taxes to buy cars at certain times of the year, okay? And as a result, I will be there for you, okay? So as you get out of the warmth and the security of your smaller, limited environment, the state actually says, I'm going to fill that space, and I'm going to give you everything, but I'm going to ask for your loyalty. In return, you're going to be loyal to me as your state. And as a result, because you live in the territory and the boundaries of that state, you start thinking that this state provides everything for you, so you should be loyal to that state. So you extend your loyalty from your family and community to your state, okay? And that might actually be a state that is not so homogeneous. It might be a multi-ethnic state. You may actually not be sharing the same language with that state. You may not be sharing the same racial characteristics with your state or ethnicity with everyone else in the state. But still, the state starts pushing you to feel as a nation, although you have all these differences, the state pushes you to see the similarities, okay? And because you need that solidarity, because you feel lonely and solitary, you feel that you are at a point that you don't belong anywhere in that point in your life, you start believing that the state is there for you, so you start feeling loyal to the state. And when I say you, I'm not really talking about individuals, I'm talking about societies at this point, okay? Because in our case, we are born into a state and we learn that the state is there for us and the state is something that we should be loyal to. I'm talking about the early societies shifting from, a non-nation state structure to a nation state structure. Okay, any questions so far? So I'm kind of trying to explain this social, the psychology of the society, especially in Europe at the time, because we're focusing on Europe, and then these ideas and these norms will spread from Europe to the world. Okay? Okay. So in that sense, Ernst Gellner, again, one of the most important nationalism scholars, he argues that nation, being a nation, is quite a huge change from more primitive societies to less primitive ones. And he believes that industrialization, especially, led to creation of nation state and nationalism. Okay?
Isn't Spruit also illegal?
Yes, Spruit also argues that industrialization actually led to the creation of the state. He doesn't really talk about nationalism. This guy, Ernst Gellner, is talking about the link between industrialization and nationalism as an ideology. Okay? So guys, I want you to actually kind of merge the things that you have learned so far. You have learned, Spruit has taught you, that the nation state, or the state, okay, the state, the sovereign state, evolved through time, okay? And in the end, by the end of First World War, the state, sovereign state, has become the norm. So all these other political units actually mimicked the state, and in the end we were left with sovereign state. Ernst Gellner says, okay, creation of the sovereign state is an older process, but nationalism is a newer process, and it starts with industrialization, really. Okay? When did we really see industrialization? Who was the country that industrialized first? England. Okay, so Britain was the first country to industrialize. So when we talk about industrialization, are we talking about a couple of years and we industrialized? No, we're talking about a process. In the case of Britain, we're talking about a couple centuries of industrialization. In the case of late industrializers, we're talking about faster industrialization, because most of the pain is borne by England, and innovative technologies already spread. So late industrializers are kind of at an advantage and at a disadvantage at the same time. So industrialization in England starts and it continues, and by 1600s you have an industrialized Britain, and then you have France, then you have Germany, Italy, all of Europe becoming industrialized, and then industrialization spreads also to the whole world. I think I already mentioned Latin American countries industrialized in 1900s. Turkey will industrialize much later than that. So different countries will have their own speed of industrialization. But we know for a fact that industrialization in Europe led to certain things, certain changes in the society. While we have already learned that industrialization changed modes of production, right? It led to division of labor. It led to factories. It led to increase in production. Okay. It also led to migration. So all these things that we have mentioned before, remember Mehmet was our carpet maker. Do I remember it right? Okay. So our carpet maker had to get into a factory because no one would come to him anymore. He's too slow to produce carpets. So now he's working in the factory at one part of the production process. I don't know, you're probably pushing a button to make a carpet, while in the past you were actually making the carpet. That's what industrialization brought to the society, right? So in your case, Mehmet, you no longer feel as much satisfaction in terms of the art of what you are doing, because now you're part of this bigger machine in the world, okay, which we actually call industrialization, and you are part of this factory system, this division of labor system, and you're no longer seeing the end product as your own product. So you're no longer satisfied, very much fulfilled with the art that you're performing, okay? And in time, let's say that Mehmet starts feeling unhappy. And he decides that from his village, he's going to move to a different place where he's going to make more money, still pushing the button to make a carpet, but you are going to make more money. Maybe you got married and you have kids and you would like, you know, more for your kids. So like you said, there is migration starting as a result of cities becoming industrial centers, okay? So from your village, you go to a city. Oh no, you become even more unhappy. Because in the city, you're away from your extended family, you're away from the community that you have been part of, that you have belonged to, that you felt that you belonged to. And then, you know, you're left all alone in the city. And at that point, you're going to start needing to subscribe to something else. And that something else is nationalism, an ideology created by the state to make people, well, to promise people that they're going to provide for them. Okay, that the state is going to provide for them. And so it also promises that it will be okay in the city, and you're going to, in time, you're going to, you know, be provided for, and you're going to start feeling secure. You just have to get used to it. And in the meantime, because the state makes you feel secure, you actually start believing that, you know, the state will always be there for you, and you build a loyalty to the state. Okay? Exactly. It is kind of like, you know, usually your mom or your dad are the figures of authority that you feel secure around, and until they come to a certain age, then you become the parents, and so you feel secure in their presence, and so the state kind of takes over the role of a father, a paternal figure, in that sense, in that stage of industrialization. Okay, so Ernst Gellner says you can't avoid nationalism. Okay, he argues that nationalism is the ideology that the state uses to make people believe that no matter what background they're coming from, they are one nation. Okay? So the whole idea is socially constructed. Let's go back to what we started with. The whole idea is a social construction in a sense that there's the reality of industrialization followed by migration, followed by people's unhappiness and loneliness, okay, and followed by the need to build new loyalties. As a result, the state that has been like Sprout said, the state that has developed over centuries, for a long time, for many centuries, finally with industrialization, decides that nationalism as an ideology is a helpful ideology to maintain the state and to justify the presence of the state. In other words, guys, people create states, but don't states become kind of, although they're created by people, they become the authorities to limit people. So it is kind of the entity that you're going to create yourself, and then that you're going to be scared of that entity after a while, because you're giving all this authority and your loyalty to this entity that we call state. Okay? So let me ask you something. I used the word scared. Are you scared of the state?
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Are you, Magnus?
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of. Yeah? How about you, Raiden?
I don't know.
For what purposes?
Yeah, if you don't abide the laws, but usually I would do that, so I wouldn't have to be scared.
Okay, so if you you know, comply with the state's laws, then you don't really have anything to be afraid of. But if you are not paying your taxes, and you know deep inside that you're not paying your taxes, you always have this feeling that you will be caught at some point. Or another thing, you know, a friend of mine, another professor at Bill Kent, actually just told me that he got a speeding ticket the other day. And it's been only 2 months that he's driving his car. And he said, you know, I can't believe that I got this speeding ticket, and it's for 290 lira. That's, okay, how, is it like $100? No, a little bit.
30 euros.
Okay, so.
He was driving too fast.
Okay, so the reason he got the ticket was because he was driving too fast. He was driving with 120 kilometers at a 50-kilometer zone, which is, you know, the road coming to Bilkent from Eskişehir road, right? So he got caught on a Saturday, and he was very upset because he thought, oh my God, you know, 130 euros is what I would use for a couple of weeks gas money, you know? So that's a lot of money in that sense.
Don't you lose his driver's license?
No, they don't get your driving license. They first give you a speeding ticket. If you actually speed and you're drunk, then you lose your driving license. But for the speeding, you first get the ticket. And I think there is a certain number, after the third time of getting a speeding ticket, then you're going to lose your license. So the point is, and then, by the way, we're driving in his car, going somewhere, and he is driving exceptionally slow. So I know how he usually drives. He drives fast. And that's how I found out about it. I said, you know, you're driving really exceptionally slow, so I'm surprised. What happened? And he tells me that I got this damn ticket, and, you know, I had to pay all this money. And then he said, after that, I started driving like, you know, like a, what did he say? Like a gentleman. Yeah. So once you get punished by the state, you actually learn how to behave. This is kind of like, I mean, you might think that I'm crazy for actually thinking these kinds of similarities, but this is kind of like, you know, you're 5 years old and you are not allowed to probably touch your father's iPad, and you do, and that's kind of that's something that happened to my niece a couple weeks ago. She actually she got her mother's iPad, and her mother, like I do, plays Smurf. And so in Smurfs, there are things that you shouldn't do, but when you do, you lose points that you have been accumulating. So she basically does that. And then she's punished. And the punishment is the worst punishment. She's not allowed to touch the iPad anymore.
Just for the game?
Which is, yes, but I mean, she did something seriously. Is it very cruel? I'll tell my sister. Well, so here's the thing, though. She did it secretly, right? So the point there is not to ruin the game. The point is she secretly got the iPad and worked on the iPad, right? So that's the point. And, you know, the family decided that she shouldn't be touching the iPad anymore, at least for a while, okay? So this kind of punishment, and she complains to me on the phone that, can I play with your iPad when you come to Istanbul? And it's actually against the rules that I give my iPad to her, but I will, of course. I'm the auntie, so I do that kind of stuff, right? So she's punished, and by being punished, she actually learns not to do it again, right? And just like that, you know, my friend learns by being punished by the state not to drive that fast. And if there was not such a punishment by the state, implemented by the Turkish state, she would probably be driving like crazy all over the place.
Sounds
okay?
Like hers.
I don't know. Okay, let's think about the alternative. If we were not like herds, in your words, if we did not comply with the state's rules, with the state's laws, what would have happened?
Perhaps the state could, instead of rewarding punish, they could teach you why it is wrong.
But don't they already do that?
They already do that when you...
Well, in theory,
You didn't get it, this guy.
But here's the thing, though. Before you get your license, you have to go take courses and all that, right? So you are supposedly learning that. But do we always implement everything that we learn?
Nah.
Of course he
We
knows
always
that.
go to driver courses. While we're getting a license.
That's true. That's true. Sometimes that happens. So guys, I mean, what happens when we don't actually give the right to the state to actually, you know, punish us? Like, isn't it us that give that power to the state to punish us? So it's actually my friend and us, all of us, that gave that power to the state. So what would happen if we all went crazy, you know, if there were no speeding tickets and we were all driving with 120 kilometers an hour?
Cats will
Would
be
be
killed.
very nice.
Cats would be the least to get killed. A lot of people would be killed, right? Speeding would lead to a lot of killings. And in that sense, that would lead to quite a chaotic environment in any city where there was no speeding rules, okay? So the state then is there to actually implement the rules that you tell the state to implement in that sense, okay? But connect this with regime type. Remember, we said in democracies, we have more contribution to what's going on, the decisions that will be taken in the state. But in non-democracies and autocratic regimes, we're not going to really have the control that much, and it will be under the elite group's control. So in that sense, then, you know, we are the ones that are giving the states some of our independence, some of our, you know, in a sense then, like Tala said, you know, we want someone to hurt us so that, you know, we're not going to be hurt, okay? So that's kind of the deal with the state and the society. And there is that kind of a deal between them. Okay? So the argument of Gellner is in pre-industrial societies, you don't really have that kind of a deal. When you don't have that kind of a deal, you actually have a society where conflict is normalized and internalized. You know, every day as you get out of your home, you're ready to die because there, you know, think of the example of speeding ticket. No speeding tickets, no laws on speeding. You actually take the risk of being run over by a car every single day. Well, in pre-industrial societies, there are no cars. So the speeding example is not a good example for that. But imagine that there are no laws against randomly killing people. So if people could randomly kill each other, I don't know, I could kill you because you're a Galatasaray fan, and nothing would happen to me.
I would defend myself or my family.
You would defend. Okay, exactly. Okay, good. My next point. I would kill you, and in return, your family would kill me. So in a pre-industrial society, without the state, there would be the state of nature kind of an environment where I would actually be free to kill you, but then bear the consequences, and the consequence would be to be killed by your family or your friends. Okay? So the shift from pre-industrial societies, past loyalties then are which were to the family and to the community, is now to the state. Okay? So the loyalties are going to change. Well, that is going to be a result, definitely a result of migration from villages to cities, like I said before. And migration is something that industrialization will always be followed. After industrialization, people will want to go to different places so that they are going to develop their life standards. Okay? And also because they can. Here's the thing. With industrialization, you actually have, you know, transportation is easier. What did we say? Steam was an important development in industrialization, right? So when you have steam boats and you have locomotives. So you have different modes of transportation that you can move from one place to another. You don't actually have to go for days on a horse. Okay? So that actually makes easier to travel. And people are, you know, naturally curious to see what's around them. So before, it was too hard to go to other places. So you would be stuck in your villages. With industrialization, you can travel. Okay? If you were not given the chance to take a plane, Sumin, would you come to Turkey? If you didn't have the opportunity to take a flight to Turkey, it would be very difficult, wouldn't it? I mean, last week I traveled for around 13 hours to go to a point in the US from Istanbul. And imagine, from Istanbul directly to the US, yeah. Imagine if I did that by boat. I don't know.
2 weeks.
That would buy horses. That would be a little difficult considering, they're different continents. Yeah, should be a horse that knows how to swim long distance. So we have done, transportation easier and people wanting to go from places to other places. And also, greater division of labor, like I said, leads to alienation of Mehmet. He doesn't feel as satisfied. And as a result, there is greater social mobility. Meaning, okay, what's social mobility? What's mobility? The ability to move from
one location to another.
Okay, if it is social mobility,
Then it's the class mobility.
class mobility,
Or economic mobility.
okay, which is related to class mobility.
Another job that your father and you can rise in economic.
Okay, so if your father was poor in pre-industrial societies, according to Gellner, you would be poor too. So poverty or belonging to an elite class is basically, genetic. It's hereditary. Now, if you're poor, you stay poor in pre-industrial societies. After industrialization, you are free to work hard. So Mehmet moved to the city, and then he became the person who pushes that button that he is pushing for carpet making the best. So you're suddenly famous again, and you're rich, and you actually have moved up in your social status. Before, you were only a villager. That's how people looked at you. Now, you are actually one of the higher classes. So class mobility has become possible as a result of industrialization. Okay? So people became freer in that sense. But at the same time, don't I always tell you that there is always a good side and a bad side of all social phenomena? That's kind of like that too. Industrialization is great in the sense that, okay, you're freer, you're richer. Well, if you work hard. And you're in the production cycle. You get out of your home, you move. But at the same time, I'll go back to the beginning of the class, you become lonelier. Okay? So one thing about industrialization is, it's great, wonderful, but at the same time, you lose your connection to your community and to everything that makes you happy in that sense. So at that point, the state, realizing that's the case, comes up with the ideology of nationalism, which is very much associated with loyalty to the state, okay, and to your nation, however that nation is defined. So the new glue to hold the society together becomes nationalism, okay? So according to Gellner, industrialization, because it leads to migration and greater division of labor and greater social mobility, it will result in the states using nationalism to hold the society together. Okay? Otherwise, imagine all these unhappy people in big cities, and they don't really have any connection to each other, and there's nothing that they feel belonging to. That might actually be quite disastrous from the perspective of nationalism. It would be quite disastrous if you don't actually feel belonging to the state and to the nation. Okay? That's why the state will teach nationalism. That's why the state will actually want its citizens to feel part of the nation. Okay? Everyone is a citizen, going back to your question. Everyone is a citizen, fine, but not everyone will feel as much part of the nation. Okay? So the state's job or state's mission becomes to maintain that level of nationalism so that the nation will stay together and the society will feel belonging. Now, in the case of multi-ethnic states, in the case of majority of states in the world, okay, we figured even Denmark has, multiple elements in it. So that means there are very few homogeneous states in the world. Rwanda or Sudan, any African state, European states, I gave the example of European states, I gave the example of US. Canada has French Canadians, Quebecois in it, right? All these states that we think of as, stronger states or homogeneous states, they are not really homogeneous, okay? So in that sense, all of them depend on nationalism so that nationalism can be used to bring together these different elements and make them feel like they are part of one nation, okay? So That is the intention of Westphalian founding fathers of the state system. That is the intention of the idea of nation state. Well, the idea blows after a while. We all know that nationalism will be hurting states a lot. I'm going to talk about next week. Okay? Thank you.